And
I'm
Okay.
good. How about you?
It's great hearing your voice. You know what? I didn't see Tish while she was here,
Okay.
but I'll tell you more because I'm going to call her today. Just tumult. But look, things are good.
Millions of
Yes,
Americans can start choosing their 2023 health insurance
And,
plans on
so that's just
healthcare.gov
one of
today.
those things.
I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT
One of
Willow
those things.
Springs.
But did you have a
and
good time while you were away?
worldwide at WCPT 820.
I
we're
did. Go back.
we're good to go. I
Oh, if
got
you can
him.
hear everything, great. You can hear
Yes.
him. You can
Yes,
see me.
everything's great. Yeah.
Great.
Do you want me to keep the auto mix on while you talk to him, or turn it off?
Oh, keep it on because it helps me to keep time.
On as normal. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right, and I did add 2 minutes, so we should be going around 6:07:50.
Okay,
From
great.
Meteorology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Fuchinski. Currently, it's 49.
This is Donald Trump on abortion.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
Donald Trump would punish a woman if she had an abortion, maybe even send her to jail. MAGA Republican Darren Bailey's even more extreme. Bailey compares abortion to the Holocaust.
The attempted extermination of the Jews of World War II, it doesn't even compare on a shadow of the life that has been lost and with abortion since its legalization.
But even Trump and Bailey are not as extreme as former state senator and former county board chairman Chris Lausen. Lausen wants to outlaw all abortions, no matter what. There is a better alternative. Kane County Democrats are pro-choice. This November, don't criminalize abortion. Say no to Trump, Bailey, and Lausen. Vote Democrat. Paid for by the Kane County Democratic Party.
Attention. Per the current government mandate, U.S.-based insurers are now required
Pastor,
to cover at-home COVID testing
could you do me a
kits
favor?
with no out-of-pocket
Before
fees
you
to you.
come
If you're
on, I
a
need
current
you to
insurance plan, you
start
are eligible to receive up to 8 COVID-19 tests.
letting your
business
network know that
each
you're going to
month,
be here.
absolutely free.
Okay?
Just visit testkitforfree.com to begin the
Yeah,
registration
because I really need
process.
to. I'll tell you because I just brought
A
someone
trusted source for
on
next generation healthcare.
to
Submit a claim
help
to
me.
your insurance provider.
Well, not to help me,
There's no
to
deductible
this
and
is what
no
she will
copay.
do.
Your 8 monthly tests will ship directly to your home or business for
And-
free. Go to testkitforfree.com.
And what I need,
COVID-19 and its variants are still here, so take
more
the worry
than
out of
anything
searching for
is that
time-sensitive
push. Yeah, for
tests
those
by
of you who have
registering you and your
networks,
family today. Visit testkitforfree.com
I need you to help me
register
to
from the
push.
comfort of your own home.
And
That's
I'm regularly on this show,
Receive
on this
COVID-19
day.
tests.
I need you to help me to
At
do
no
that.
cost. Just visit
Okay.
testkitforfree.com today.
Cool.
Paid for by TRO Health.
Oh boy,
This
thank
is
you, hon.
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Mhm. Okay, how much time? I see here.
What is a number story?
My number story started with
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you so much.
Our story begins in our childhood with ACEs, adverse childhood experiences.
My number story begins with the separation from my father and the emotional abandonment from my mother, and leads to me being a role model to not only myself, but those around me by becoming the person that wasn't there for me.
ACEs are so common, 2/3 of us have one.
my number story begins with drug abuse and
Okay.
homelessness, and
Okay.
leads to realizing
And
that I can live life by
Pastor
my own
Thurston, they're
A
trying to
study
put
found
the
more cases,
Haitian
the more likely
asylum
women experience a
seekers
host of serious health effects, physical
at,
and mental, but that
they're
doesn't
trying to put
mean
them
to
at
be the case.
Guantanamo.
Your ACE number is simply an
Mhm.
entity of your own story.
That's it. These folks just don't stop.
My number
Whew.
story begins with years of emotional
It never ends.
It never ends. Well, my father said, this is
Control the world.
a right-wing
Number Story
country.
Minutes at numberstory.org.
And, and you have to understand that. And I said, wow, his mind ain't gone nowhere, I tell you that.
Just doing his job.
No. Everybody stopped and said, okay.
And we out here as public workers.
We have a little less than a minute.
Okay, thank you.
to take care of our families. This is real, and y'all need to take this serious.
Coronavirus took Jason's life 11 days after he recorded that message. Blacks are twice as likely to die from the virus. Until this fight is over, the least we can do is to do our
30 seconds.
for those who can't. Together, we can help beat this thing.
Right.
If you must
Boy,
go
something,
out, be sure to
so you
social
just keep
distance
on going.
and wear masks
I
and
just
gloves
found something
in
that I
public
needed to
places.
see.
For the sake of our families, our friends, for fallen heroes like Jason.
That is what I needed.
I love y'all. Peace.
This message was brought to you by
Stand by. We're about to go live.
Thank you so much. Let's have a great show with the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts. Be acceptable in thy sight. Oh Lord, our strength and our redeemer. Thank you, Jesus.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Yeah, you know I'm still pulling down information for you. It's Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy, a privilege, an honor, a blessing to be with you today. And we've got a lot to talk about. Haitian refugees are still not getting the love that we're showing to European refugees, namely Ukrainians in this moment. Remember when we were planning to welcome 100,000 Ukrainians, and we have done that, and then some. But the Africans, the Haitians, the South American indigenous brothers and sisters are being held at the border. And now we're talking about putting the Haitian asylum seekers, would-be immigrants, if you will. We are talking about putting them at a Guantanamo base. You know, the prison? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about that. At least that is being mulled over by the Biden administration. What about affirmative action? Boy, the questioning was contentious. Even Clarence Thomas spoke yesterday, and he said, what is diversity anyway? Your place on the court. But having said that, Justice Alito was very sharp in his questioning of a pro-affirmative action lawyer. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, for her portion, was very pointed in her questioning of a lawyer who opposed affirmative action. It's going to be contentious. It's a conservative court. It appears that this court is inclined to end affirmative action, to end or severely limit GUT. In other words, using race as a metric for getting into these major universities. Now, mind you, a big chunk, for example, of those people who are admitted to the Ivy League, they are legacies. Even George W. Bush was. He said, look, I don't know how I got into to Yale. And then he chuckled when he was speaking at Yale. Jared Kushner, his parents gave $2 million to Harvard. Even his high school said, what is he doing going there? He's taking the place of someone who's eminently qualified. You know, I'm not mad at him, nice guy. That having been said, we need to really understand the game here. Right, Pastor Thurston? You need to understand. Of course, Pastor Stephen Thurston, teaching pastor at Salem Baptist Church, is going to give us the good news in a couple of minutes. But you need to understand the politics of getting people into college. So when you are told that you are an affirmative action and admit, as several of my friends told me when I got into Harvard and Yale, right? Well, you know, they tossed it off. You know, some of my class, one or two, they knew better because I was actually head of the Honor Society. They knew better. They knew better. At a higher rank than you, you know better. And I'm not bragging, but I mean, that's something that's tossed as an insult. And it's tossed as an insult when it should be an affirmation. People who are admitted under the affirmative action program have to meet the minimum standards. That is not what happens with legacy admits. Is that, Pastor? If your legacy, if your mom or daddy went there or both, you just get in. That's just that's the reality. If your family's got money, you get in. So we're going to be talking with Dr. Julianne Malveaux about this. And of course, the midterms, we are 1 week away from today for the midterms. Wow, we're going to be up all night. And of course, I will be because, of course, my brother, fully disclosed, Jonathan Jackson, is running to be the congressman for the 1st Congressional District of Illinois. The most historically black seat in Congress has been black for almost 100 years. So I'm very excited about that night. But I want to see what's going to happen with Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker and Miss Beasley, Justice Beasley down in North Carolina, and Mandela Barnes up in Wisconsin, and John Fetterman and Mark Kelly. I want to know what's going to happen. What's going to happen in these House races? What's going to happen in the gubernatorial races? Everybody, please vote. Find out what your status is. Go to vote.org. Vote.org. And when you go to vote.org, also find out where you need to go vote, because that is a challenge. Many of us are dealing with closed precincts. In Chicago, more than 100 were closed, impacting more than 100,000 voters in June when we had our primary. So everybody, also, if you are voting early or if you vote on next Tuesday, if you have any problems in your polling place, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. If you are bumping into, if you drop your vote off at the ballot box and you're intimidated, take pictures, record everything, but call 1-866-OUR-VOTE and do not leave until your vote has been cast. At 1-866-OUR-VOTE, you have a lot of lawyers who are going to help you. I know I sound like a running commercial for this, but your vote is so important. On that day, the billionaire and the homeless person are equal. Remember that. The least of these and people who have taken too much are on equal footing. Get out and vote. More than 21 million people as of yesterday have voted. We've already broken the 2018 record. So let's get right to it. In Chicago, it's going to be a beautiful day, 66 degrees and sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 70 degrees and sunny. Major League Baseball, well, the Astros versus the Phillies tonight. Who you got? Now, the trend says the Phillies will win, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, everybody. In the NFL, wow. The Browns, 32. The Bengals, 13. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be facing off against the Suns, and the Bulls will be playing the Nets. And in the NHL, the New York Islanders will be playing Chicago, and the Canadiens will be playing the Wild. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We're just 3 weeks away from Thanksgiving. Can you believe it, everybody? But now some Delta pilots say their contract is years out of date. And while pilots at other airlines, especially regional carriers, have already negotiated substantial pay bumps and amid crew and staffing shortages, some pilots are intensifying their push for better pay, and they're threatening to strike. Let's hope that that does not happen. But first, we want justice for the pilots, everybody. Right-wing justices appear ready to eviscerate affirmative action in college admissions during the course of roughly 5 hours of oral argument yesterday. The U.S. Supreme Court's far-right supermajority seemed open to rolling back decades of precedent, allowing public and private colleges and universities to make race-conscious admissions decisions a thing of the past. We're going to be talking with the brilliant Dr. Julianne Malveaux at the top of the next hour about that and what it will mean to eliminate race as one of the poles of admission. That's right. What do you think about that, everybody? Russia's partial mobilization of citizens to fight its war against Ukraine has been completed. President Putin said today, citing Russia's Ministry of Defense, President Putin said 41,000 recruits were currently in combat formations of the Russian armed forces. They're ripping us off. British petroleum profits could pay energy bills of 9.4 million UK households. The London-based oil and gas giant, which is on many corners in the United States, reported Tuesday that it brought in a staggering $8.2 billion in profits in the third quarter, more than doubling its total from the same period last year amid Europe's worsening cost of living crisis. Again, their profits could pay the energy bills of 9.4 million UK households. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And should the Democrats make more of a case about the economy? Should they not tell the story about all that they had planned to do that the Republicans have thwarted? Call me. I want to hear your thoughts. 773-763-9278. More than 2 months after residents in Jackson, Mississippi were plunged into a public water crisis, the EPA announced yesterday that the water in the city is safe to drink again. Water issues in the region were compounded after flooding overwhelmed the city's already troubled water system, and the main treatment plant failed, resulting in brown, cloudy water flowing from the pipes. Do you believe that water's safe? I do not. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Let us get to Pastor Stephen Thurston. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing.
All right, always amazing, always amazing. My board operator said, "Oh, I just love hearing from Pastor Thurston," and so here we are. And so let me just ask you this: are you going to be on Facebook Live this afternoon? And if so, what are you going to be talking about?
I will be on today at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll probably today focus on a recap. We just got back from Morocco. We did our Mirror Moment meetup in Morocco. Just got back in yesterday. So we learned some lessons. So I'm going to compile all of those lessons that we learned while we were there and share it with those who weren't able to make it with us over to the motherland.
You know, it is amazing. You know, travel means so much. It changes your perspective. There's nothing like reading the Time magazine that's published over in Germany. Because they have their own time. They have their own news weeks. They have their own versions of what we read, and their perspectives are so very different.
So different.
When you're in Japan, their perspectives are so very different. Even the things that they talk about, very different. I mean, you see how heavily censored we are here by our corporate media and the corporate establishment. Mm-hmm. That having been said, teaching pastor, Salem Baptist Church, of course, your home church's New Covenant, loving the Thurstons and loving the Meeks family out of Salem. What's the good news today?
Well, I want to raise this question. Is the grass really greener on the other side?
Oh,
listen, it's a common experience to think, to fantasize about things, people, places that oftentimes seem better than what you currently have. I mean, the job, the lifestyle, the title, the significant other. You can even scroll through social media, and that can lead you to feel as if your life sucks and that you're a complete failure. And there's a feeling of never being satisfied that often overcomes us, that seduces us into peeking over that proverbial fence. That's how the advertisers get us every time. They sell us the dream of, if you have this, if you secure this, if you get this, if you dress like this, then things will be better. But we really got to ask ourselves the question, do you really need the newest, the latest, the biggest? There's the mindset that no matter how amazing my life is, someone else seems to have exactly what I want. And listen, it just appears that the grass is always greener on the other side. We want the blessing, not realizing the burdens that often come attached. Listen, it's a package deal. And this framework, this phrase rather, of the grass being green on the other side, it's really just a mental framework for the way we view different people, different situations, as we always think that what we have is not enough, that we should have a better life than we currently have. And the reality is that this is hardly ever the case. We're looking at their life, their possessions through rose-colored lenses. But Stephen, you don't know my life. I really could use a better relationship to feel happier. Listen, Stephen, a better job would cause me to feel more respected. I hear you, but allow me to help you to put some of that into context. Here's some facts, some data. Around 792.5 million people in the world are undernourished. 783 million people don't have access to clean water. 2.5 billion people don't have access to adequate sanitation. 70 million children don't have access to basic education. 800 million people worldwide don't have enough food to eat day to day. So with that being in mind, are you really sure that your life is really that bad? We're constantly looking for the unknown in an endless quest. So we compare our lives with others, and this keeps us living within this illusion that the perfect life is out there for us to find. And so you may be wondering as you hear me, well, Stephen, why am I like this? What's driving this mindset, this behavior? It's oftentimes two things, Santita, fear and fantasy. Let's look at fear of missing out. We don't commit to anything because of fear of missing out on a better thing. Or fantasy. If I change things around me, life is going to get better. That's why we see so many having midlife crisis. We run away from our lives to fantasy island. Listen, I get it. Reality can hurt, but fantasy can be disastrous if our expectations of it aren't met. When we say that the grass is greener on the other side, we're often just projecting our own unhappiness or our dreams. Here's the key to this lesson today. Changing external factors won't fix problems that are deeply rooted within. You've got to change what's within first if you're going to change what's around. Well, Stephen, what is it that's within that I need to adjust in relation to the context of the content you're sharing with me? Well, listen, I want to challenge you to change your mindset from a lack mentality to an abundance mentality. With an abundance mentality, what you're lacking is what you're not giving. What you're without is what you're resisting to be with. And somebody's confused, so let me put it this way. Many of us don't lack, we just lust. How we landscape our own gardens and tend to our own grass determines what we'll get in return. The grass is greenest where it's watered. And maybe, just maybe, if you wanted what you already have as bad as you want what somebody else already has, yours would appear just as nicer or even better. Now, let me bust this myth as I close out, because someone's listening and you've got this idea that you can have someone else's life. That's not true. That's a myth. When you focus on the other side of the fence and deny your own reality, it leads you to lose focus of confidence and hope. Accepting your reality for what it is gives you the chance to develop it, improve it, and grow it. So before you build another fence between yourself and someone else, comparing your life to theirs, I want you to raise this question. How is this separation a reflection of me and my resistance to what is? How am I preventing my own abundance? What am I trying to deny about my current reality? What am I hoping was different and why? Worrying about what might be and wondering about what might have been will have you ignoring what is. With enough water, everybody's grass can be green, Santita. So I want to challenge us today to go water what you have.
Tartuffe said, tend to your own garden. Remember that?
That's it.
Because you got one. You've got one. It might not look like so-and-so, but you haven't paid that price. Remember, everybody's paying. Everybody's paying. I love you, Pastor Thurston. Facebook Live at 3 p.m. Today. Pastor Stephen Thurston, that's Stephen with a PH, and of course his book Mirror Moments can be purchased on his website. Stephen, what is the name of your website? What's
Stephen with PH, StephenJThurston.com.
Okay, I was about to put the J in there, but I wasn't sure. Sending you much love. 3:00 this afternoon, everybody. That's right. Envy it's a deadly sin. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton, so brilliant, infection preventionist. And we're just coming off of Halloween. Ooh, I'm not going to cross my fingers. The prayers are up that people had a safe Halloween. What's on your mind today, Dr. Knighton?
Good morning. I was going to say that was just a good word right there. So that's all that's on my mind right now, right?
Yes.
But water your own grass, okay?
Yes.
Which is important.
Like wash your own hands.
That's it. Wash your own hands. Practice water your own infection prevention and control practices, right?
That's
Meaning
right.
make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So I think that that's so applicable, right now, and we can say that that's happened so much during this time, is that sometimes we have focused so much on other people's health, on other people's habits, that we don't even pay attention to our own. And so I've always said during this time, the need to practice kindness, right? And it does help us to reflect back on, I would say, who we are, on who we were, and what it is that we want to be, or who it is that we want to be, specifically as it comes to infection prevention and control. So right now, if we're walking into, and I'm going to say run-in or dread-in, however we call it, because we got a lot going on, but these winter months and fall months, and it is times of unknown, with us knowing that we have multiple bugs that are going to be amongst us at one time, I remind people to practice kindness. There was a lot of anger that was going around between who was masking versus who wasn't, who was vaccinated versus who wasn't. And it was almost like a haves or have not mentality that was going on, right? And here it is, people concern themselves more with the practices of others instead of doing their own maintenance, making sure that as we're going into these months that their diet is correct, meaning that their immune system is boosted, you know, with the green leafy vegetables, the foods that don't have labels or expiration dates, in order for them to make sure that should their body encounter any particular kind of germ, that it can fight it off. So that's, again, like watering your own grass, right? The other piece of it is when we talk about infection prevention practices and how do we get ready for this season, we think about the people that are around us. And so are the individuals that you are around right now, are they too making sure that they're keeping themselves safe so that way they can keep you safe? If that is the case, then if that isn't the case, rather, then those are the individuals that you'll be wanting to speak with and let them know why they matter to you and why it is important that they practice good infection prevention and control. And nothing is wrong with sitting around and being able to do so. So instead of, let's say, potentially just having a conversation, make it into a conversation. Let me see your hand hygiene techniques. Let me see, you know, particularly, how do you put on your mask? How do you make sure that it stays clean? Nothing's wrong with having these conversations, because essentially if these will be the individuals that you'll be spending time with, you want to make sure that their infection prevention practices is just as good as yours. Because naturally when you let your guard down and there's the hugging and there is the fellowship and we're dwelling indoors, where windows and doors are closed, which again, Santita, last year I told people to put some extra money in the heat bill.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like
Absolutely.
if we're dwelling indoors, you want to make sure that you're actually being able to stay safe. And so I know that coming up, within our next couple of weeks, as we're going into the winter months, how do you get winter ready, for infectious diseases? How do you get winter ready for the prevention of colds and flu? And when I say prevention, it's really minimizing the risk. But as we're talking, and I'm hoping that
because we're 3 weeks away from Thanksgiving. I mean, it's hard to believe, but we're right here. And then 4 weeks after that is Christmas. We really do need to figure out how to winterize. Can you talk to us about that tomorrow and just kind of start that conversation with us?
Sounds good.
All right. Love Dr. Shanita Knight. And hey, Dr. Nina, that's her handle. That's her handle. Let's talk, everybody here on. Oh, wow. On the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Thank you, sweetie. I'm sorry I have to be out actually a little bit earlier. But but it's good hearing your voice today.
You too.
Whew.
You too. I'm gonna send pictures yesterday. Our baby had a good time trick or treating. He was so cute. He was a little scarecrow.
Well, was he able to get out?
Yeah, he was able to get out. Yeah, we went to it went to a city that wasn't like too crowded, so he was able to have fun.
Bless your heart.
I'll have to send you over a picture when I get time.
Please do. Please do.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that he's walking around. That means a whole lot. Have you ever seen this guy's I don't know if you have the space to do it. Joel Burvell. I'll send him to you. He's a young med student, black med student, and he talks about the racial bias in medicine.
I ain't gonna lie. Like, I still got to follow up with Micah.
Okay.
I do. I want to say we each other a few times, but like I got to follow up with her. I think she might have caught me like while I was on travel. And you know how you look at a message and you think you respond.
You know what? I will call her. I'll call her today too, because I've got to go over to Northwestern and see a couple of people. So I will do that as well.
So yeah, I'll call her today again. We did initially speak, but I just need to reach back out to her because it's been like this that season. It's been super busy, and I've been heavy on travel.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Well, please do, because she's an absolute jewel, and she needs the mentoring, So, I mean, we assume because, we all went to school together, not you and I, but, Like I think that there's a plethora of black lawyers and there's a plethora of black doctors. There's a plethora of black engineers. And there's a plethora because I went to school with them. There are a plethora of people who are producing network television. There are a plethora because I went to school with all the people who are doing it, And so that's
right.
Yeah. It's something.
Your environment probably will have you thinking that it's more of a.
Stand by, Santita. Stand by.
Who do we have?
Stand by. We're still working on Attorney Patillo. We have everyone else.
We have Attorney Hoffler? Okay. I'm sorry, CK.
Yeah, we have
I'm sorry.
Attorney Hoffler and we have Miss Wells. We have about 30 seconds till we're live.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. And, send me a number if you still want me this morning, CK.
Okay. As soon as they send me all the, because it's slightly different today, as soon as they send me all of that, I will send it to you.
Okay, fantastic.
It'll be the call-in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry I had to cut through, Shanina. We are moving on to this next topic.
We're about to go live.
All right.
Stand by. We're going
Stand
live.
by, everybody. Quiet, please.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278. Santita Jackson here. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station based here in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And so many of you are reaching out from all over the world. Yay, Lula da Silva has won the presidency of Brazil. That is huge, huge, huge. The right wing and the corporate establishment, and some of them are on the left, spent a lot of time trying to block this labor icon, this man of the people, from the presidency to putting him in jail. And they thought that would end Lula. Actually made him come back stronger, even though his margin of victory was narrow. The fact is he did win. And no one ever expected that. No Brazilian president has ever not won re-election. How about that? So Bolsonaro actually is the first. So let's talk today about what we're doing with those who would be immigrants to the United States of America. We have treated European immigrants very differently than we treat African immigrants and brown immigrants, indigenous people, because, after all, this is an indigenous hemisphere. So a lot of our indigenous brothers and sisters, really, they speak Spanish because that's the language. We all speak the languages of our conquerors, but they're indigenous people. These are Native American people. And they're being held back at the border as we welcome in the Ukrainians. I think you need to welcome everybody because that is the whole point of America, at least one of the points. But we're now talking about not only, did we put Haitians on planes and fly them out of here? Oh, no, we didn't just do that. We are now talking about sending them to the prison at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. I want you to tell me what you think about that. 773-763-9278. I'm going to take your comment or your question. Let's just talk about it. 773-763-9278. 763-9278. And then I want you to tell me about affirmative action. Should it go? Should it stay? And the midterms. Taking your questions and comments about all of that throughout the show. Call me. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Before we get into this with Attorney C.K. Hoffler, still trying to get Attorney Robert Patillo, let me go to you, Chaparral. It is now 3 weeks. 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks away from Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. You're taking orders for the holiday now? Chaparral, you there? Oh, Chaparral, I know she's there.
She is on. I'm not sure.
Okay, wait,
I think she might be on mute.
Why she is. Chaparral, are you there? Well, we'll get her at the top we'll get her just before we get out of here. But let me get to you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler.
Sounds good.
In the United States, we do welcome Ukrainians. But, we saw this as we saw the Haitians literally beaten back by men on horseback. about a year ago. It was devastating because it just took us back to slavery, right? I mean, that's what it looked like to us. And it looked like, and it sent people of all backgrounds down to the border to see what was going on. Indeed, I had one of the Kennedys on here because that's where my brother Jonathan saw her. He saw her down there, and she was, I think it was Carrie. Like, wait a minute, what is going on here? How are you going to treat people this way? And yet, President Biden, as he has welcomed 100,000 refugees, Ukrainian refugees, Haitians were still being deported. Now that was, last year, and earlier this year, really, rather.
Hello, I can't hear anything.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, she can't hear me now. She cannot hear me now.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, CK.
Okay, stand by.
I told her we were listening. I'm
Okay.
texting Santita now.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, stand by. We're going to get that right.
Can you hear me, CK?
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you. I thought it was my phone. And then I was like, wait, this one makes sense.
Okay. Can you hear me now, everyone?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
very good. We're going to come to you at the top of the hour, Chaparral. Sorry about that, everybody. We're just, trying to work out some of these technical issues. That having been said, CK, can you hear me as I say? You remember when the Biden administration said officially we're going to welcome 100,000 Ukrainians to the United States. Yeah. We're going to do that. Okay, and we were like, that's fine. But then we saw, and many of them were coming in through the southern border. Okay. But we saw them leaving South and Central Americans. They would not let them in. They would not let Haitians in. They would not let Africans in. Okay, so there's that. And then Haitians were being boarded on planes, and they were like, great, I'm going to get to Miami. I'm going to get to the you're going to take me into the United States. No, they were being dumped back in Haiti, where many of them were escaping political persecution, So there's that, prosecution and persecution. And so you well know because maybe there is no court because you do need court to be prosecuted, but they were being persecuted. That's why they left, and they were leaving poverty. Much of it induced by France, the United States, Great Britain, the West. So there's that, and so now we see. Now they're going to send one of the ways of dealing with this crisis in they're calling that a crisis. When Ukrainians are trying to get in, it's not a crisis, it's an opportunity. So what they're going to do with that, one of the possibilities for the Haitians is to send them to Guantanamo base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, which is a prison. It's a military prison. CK, what is going on?
Well, I think what's going on is really terribly, terribly, terribly unfortunate, and it's actually awful. There are a lot of things that I believe President Biden has done and Vice President Harris have done that go unnoticed that are very, very good. But there are some things that have happened that the president has done, policies that he's implemented, that I think are awful, and this is one of them. This is a continuation of the past administration's policy, but it's been executed because of the war in Ukraine. It's been executed in such a way that makes you feel that there's discrimination and racism just leaving, just through every orifice of U.S. immigration policy. It's terrible. I'm sorry, that's my dog in the background.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it really, really, truly is unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It feels bad. We saw for the first time, I had never seen, quite frankly, I had never seen Americans being, hit by armed people on horses, or any immigrants treated that way. I'd never seen that. I've seen people for sure at the border being assaulted or pushed back across the border and things like that, arrested, detained, and very, very bad circumstances. But I'd never seen people on horseback hitting people with batons in a way that was reminiscent of slavery. And so all of that, that's probably going to go down in history as this administration's darkest moment. And to think that we have a vice president who is an immigrant, whose family is an immigrant, it really is ironic that it's happening while she is vice president. I'm sure they're embarrassed by it.
But CK, every white person in America gives you an immigrant story. I mean, except for people who are descended from the Pilgrims. I mean, seriously. And so the immigrant story is central to the American narrative, and everyone's proud of it. Well, I mean, and Black people, our story is very different. Indigenous people, their story is very different. Even when you talk to Mexican Americans, they call the United States El Norte. It's the North. We, Los Angeles, it was held by the Spaniards, but it was indigenous. New Mexico, Texas, are you serious? So, I mean, what are these folks talking about? How dare you put anyone back, particularly people who are indigenous to these lands? And just, I think the hypocrisy of seeing the doors opened for Europeans. I mean, look, I believe everybody in, nobody out. But the fact is, most visa overstays in the United States, CK, are not from people from the south of the border. They're not people from African nations, not people from India. It's Canadians. They're the ones who overstay their visas here. And they're never, ever, ever discussed as a problem. Or there's a crisis at the border. We got two borders here. Canada to the north and South and Central America to the south. I mean, come on, CK. This is, I mean, the hypocrisy is, I mean, to send them, what does it say for us to send these people to the Guantanamo base in Guantanamo Bay? That's a military prison. What are we doing?
Well, I think what it says is we do not care about these immigrants. Not only do we not care about it, they're a nuisance, and we're just going to put them somewhere, just anywhere. And if they want to stay in U.S.-controlled territories, even though it's Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, but it's a U.S. military prison, we'll just put them there because that's going to be the closest they're going to be to the U.S. soil. And it's really offensive. It's terrible. It's offensive. It's racist. And the reason why I say it's racist, this particular policy, again, I start off by saying there are a lot of good things that I think this administration has done, but this is not one of them. This is one of their darkest moments. And the reason why I say that is because it's in the face of allowing Ukrainians to come into this country. Now, please understand, I think Ukrainians should come to this country. I think everybody should be allowed to come in. Either everybody should be allowed to come in or nobody should be allowed to come in to immigrate. Either we should allow everyone who meets the criteria, like most of the immigrants do, or we should have a moratorium and say we're sorry to everyone, but we shouldn't cherry pick based on nationality, cultural heritage, etc. Because we can't say that people in some of these countries aren't facing just as devastating situations as what we're seeing in the Ukraine. They have for a while. There are many wars going on in this world. There are many wars that have been going on in this world, but only some wars, of course, reach national attention in the U.S. And some of the conflicts that we've seen that have gone on forever. And I used to spend time, as you know, Santita, in Angola. Angola had a civil war for 33 years. 33 years, but because of the Cuban presence in Angola, people weren't allowed Angolans to come in and immigrate freely, but they were allowing people from other countries to come in and immigrate freely. So there's complexity to this policy that results in, and that makes it feel like there's a racial and cultural bias against certain countries. And that's the reality. We can't get around it. It just really is. We can't say, oh, no, it's because of the war in Ukraine. Well, again, there are wars in a lot of countries. There have been wars in a lot of foreign countries. And yet we've turned our back on some of the immigrants coming from those countries. You can't really determine that somebody from the Ukraine is going to face greater persecution and prosecution. It's both. Because prosecution, yes, typically and the way we define it goes to a court system. But they will go to a system, a judicial system, a military system, which is also just as meaningful or impactful as the court system. It's just he'll go straight to jail, be executed in some instances. So it really, really, Santita, is uneven application of the law, and it's an unspoken. There's an unspoken thread of racism that appears to permeate through this law. And we did really expect more from this administration in terms of immigration law. Like I said, this is a dark cloud over the administration, and it's going to be. It's being underplayed right now because of the elections. I mean, this is not something that's coming up or an issue that's being raised, not really in a dominant way during this election season. And there are, again, I want to underscore, just look at this in the big picture. There are a lot of wonderful things this administration has done. This is not one of them. This is not one of them. And this is something that is so ironic because we have a vice president who is an immigrant.
And wait a minute, and a president who is from immigrants. Look, that's there's that. Because he always he hews to his Irish roots, and he actually has Irish roots and then some. But that's what he talks about. And so he's not talking about, being indigenous to the United States. He's an American citizen proudly, but that is, I think that is the rub. That is the rub. Everybody here, the only people who are indigenous here are the indigenous people, and none of us are that, except the indigenous people.
Absolutely. So everybody's immigrant. That's the irony. That's the sadness. That's the hypocrisy, and that's the tragedy of what's happening. I just didn't think I would see that in this country. I've seen it in other countries. I really have.
Girl, that is what we do.
And we have taken a very strong position in other countries.
Yeah.
We have condemned other countries for applying such tactics. But yet, this is one of those things that we do here. We've done this for a very long time. Other administrations have done it. We expected that from the Trump administration because he said it. All those people from the country of Africa, barbarians, he made it very clear that that's what he felt. And so we expected that his policies would reflect that. I mean, he said, this is what I feel the Trump is doing. This is what's going to happen. That's exactly what happened.
But he was big. Look, he put the quiet part out loud. I'm not defending. I'm just saying we've always, we bring in the lighter skinned Cubans. We push the Haitians back out to the alligators, right? I mean, let's just keep it 100. I mean, that has been American policy, whether it's been a Democratic or Republican administration. And I think that we need to call it out, because this is not the way this is supposed to work. It's not.
And we can't say that it's a Cold War. We can't say it's communism because that's not where we are. Because, back in the day, the excuse for how we treated, Cubans and people from other, quote unquote, communist countries was, well, they're communists, and we don't want that. We don't want to support that in this country. But yet we would allow some if they were seeking political asylum. But even with those seeking political asylum, the determination of which those people from quote unquote the communist countries was in large part determined by the color of their skin, the hue of their skin. And I think that's the thing. It's unspoken. It's something that immigration lawyers, immigration policy groups, progressive folks that have their eye on immigration have always said represents one of the greatest hypocrisies of this country. But there we have it. And I guess we're just seeing it with social media. We're seeing so many things up close and personal that people can't get away from. And I think that's also a difference.
Well, let me bring on. Let me take Maurice's call. I mean, because the fact is, it's just hypocrisy all the way around. Look, Britain is socialist. They're our best friends. And the communist Chinese are our bankers. I mean, what's that? They hold half of our debt. They share a little more than half the debt with the Japanese. So get out of here. We don't care about these philosophies. This is color-coded. This is a color-coded immigration system, and it's a tragedy. Maurice, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, good morning.
Hey.
The Haitians it's bad. They get it when they were under the bridge down in down in Texas or on the other side. They also say, you know what, you shouldn't throw bricks when you live in a glass house, Miss Santita. Because you got the race. That was a pure racist move that the Democratic Party did to the Haitians under the bridge. This is a pure racist gesture or attempt that they're going to do to the Haitians again. So, you know, as I said, the Democratic Party, they're racist in their actions, especially because there was 1,000 Haitians under that bridge, swept away. The liberal, racist media swept it under the rug. Nobody made a fuss or.
No, people did make a fuss. People did make a fuss.
Okay. All right.
People did make a fuss. People did.
Yeah, you make excuses for
No,
them.
Maurice. No. Because wait. No, let's not talk over each other, Maurice.
That was a racist act.
Maurice, I didn't say. Maurice, stop it. Now let's talk with each other. I've never disrespected you, and I will not allow you to disrespect me. Now, you know I like to engage, but what I will not do is have facts ignored. This is not a fact-free zone. Okay? The fact is, what I'm saying to you is you have people like Maxine Waters, you have Reverend Sharpton, you have Jonathan Jackson and the National Action Network, you have NAACP, you had Kerry Kennedy, you had people who went down there to shine a light. You also have a corporate media who stayed there for a couple of days and then they deflected and they turned away. No one has fought harder for Haitians, I would say, than the Black community. And I would say specifically my family. Aristide used to stay in my parents' house. Father Jean Just used to stay in my father's house 40 years ago. We have been trying to shine a light. We have been fighting to stop this barbaric practice of sending Haitians to the sea. They didn't care if they were on rafts and they were going to be eaten by alligators in the water, and bringing in the Cubans. We have been fighting. Now we need you to join in the fight and your friends. Okay. So we can make enough of a fuss, because we can't do it alone.
Okay. Well,
because I have never been a mouthpiece for the Democrats. We've had to fight the Democrats to get on the stage, Maurice.
Well, they didn't, like I said, you can't throw bricks and live in a glass house.
You're absolutely right, but I'm going to tell you, like I said, it's not a fact-free zone here. Okay? So don't make me an apologist for the Democrats, because I've never been that. I've had to fight them every step of the way. And I've fought to make room for you.
Look, hold up. The Democrats have been racist. You ain't made room in Illinois.
Well, no, we've had to fight the mayor here. We have made more progress here. One moment, Maurice. We have made more room. Maurice, we have made more. Maurice, stop. Now, if you want to talk with me, I'm not going to be rolled over. I'm not going to be.
All right.
I'm not accustomed to men shouting me down or women shouting me. I'm not going to have that. That's out. It's out.
Well, you can't make it.
No, it's out. I'm not making excuses, but you will not speak to me in a disrespectful way. Otherwise, I will invite you to leave. And then when you calm down and you want to speak to me respectfully, you can call me back. But until then, absolutely not. I will not have it. So, everybody, Maurice, I'll give you, like I said, you got 1 minute, and it will be respectful. Otherwise, you will be gone.
Okay. Got it. 10-4.
Now, what do you have to say? Make your comment in less than a minute.
The party, this is the last comment. Illinois party has railroaded the black man on construction. You can look out there.
We know that.
They got a big outfit name. Well, I'm trying to say that it wasn't the Owls and all those people of the world that you said didn't help get us in. It's been 30 years.
Maurice, are you a member of any organization?
It's a fact.
No, Maurice, I'm not disputing that. Maurice, I'm not disputing that. But one moment, let me ask you this, because my father is 81. Wait a minute, Maurice. Reverend Jackson is 81. No, stop it. With Parkinson's. He can barely walk now. In the days when it's hard for him to speak, And you know who stops by the office every day? People who want contracts, people, big folks who need billion-dollar contracts, people who need $1,000 contracts. That has been the fight. My question is, have you been in on the fight? I mean, I understand the complaint, but have you marched one time to help us to get contracts for people? Because that's what we've been doing at Operation Push and Operation Breadbasket and Rainbow Push. In 1967, Ebony magazine wrote about Reverend Jackson and called him the apostle of economics in Dr. King's staff setup. Because Dr. King was the architect, Reverend has been the builder. The question has always been, it was going from Reverend Dr. Leon Sullivan said, we have to go from civil rights to silver rights. Have you been in on that fight? If you haven't been, I'm not going to blame you, but I will ask you very humbly to get involved right now. Complaining has its place, but you got to construct.
How about speaking the truth?
No, I have spoken the truth. I just said that's the fight. We agree on that. I've asked you what you are doing. Don't be defensive. Just get involved in the fight, Maurice. Enough. Put him on mute. I love you. I will talk to you during the break. Now, y'all can complain if you want to. And you need to understand, I got the mic, and I want to speak with you, Maurice. But I'm not going to be dealt with disrespectfully. Ever. I'm not going to deal with you disrespectfully. But as I've said to you, this is not a fact-free zone. Everyone who knows anything about politics in Chicago knows that the people we've had to fight have been the Democrats. We know that. Nobody's making excuses for them. They may have kicked Reverend in the teeth. Reverend can't even get a seat at the Democratic convention. What are you talking about? And yet we keep on going. Because on average, 90% of black people vote Democratic. So we're fighting to get them seats at the table. And then when we get folks seats at the table, they won't let Reverend Jackson and the rest of us in the room. So why don't you deal with that? We know about the contracts. Be a member of an organization and help somebody instead of complaining about everybody. And I say that with love, my brother. But be about it. Don't just talk about it. Now, let's talk about affirmative action, which they're about to eliminate. Get involved in that fight, too. Because a whole lot of kids are not going to get into school who deserve to be in school. While some kids whose parents have money or position are going to be pole vaulted into school. And Thomas Grasser, yes, I was qualified to get into Harvard and Yale. In fact, Harvard told my mama that we had to fight to get her through. And these are the people who called me. I was a merit scholar, sweetheart. Don't mess with my qualifications because I was on the money, so just stop. Reverend was so controversial then. No one was going to let me into anywhere, including my high school. So let's talk about affirmative action, and then we're going to have John Nichols talking about the midterms coming up on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Hey, everybody. CK, sorry I had to go there, but sometimes we do. What you say? Oh my God. No, but it's just, look, I'm just saying I'm just keeping it real. I know who we've had to fight. Don't you call me or troll me or whatever you were trying to do this morning. Come to me with some facts.
Miss Jackson,
yes.
Really quick, did you want to speak to Maurice during the break?
Yes, I do want to speak to Maurice during the break, and I also want to keep Chaparral on so that I can bring her on after I do my live read. No, ask her if she would do that at 7:30.
7:30.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call her and ask. All right, here's Maurice. I'm going to cue him up for you.
Thank you.
He should be on now.
And you'll bring on Dr. Malvo?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Maurice?
Yeah.
You're still there. We're on Facebook Live. I've got a minute for you to say what you need to say, okay?
Okay. So what I'm saying is this. I said, like I said, can't throw bricks and live in a glass house. I should party, both parties. What is it? There's expressing the devil. I know that I rather deal with the devil. I guess you're saying you rather deal with the devil you know than the one you don't know. Because that's why you're sticking to the Democratic Party and telling everybody, not everybody, telling people why the Democratic Party should be supported. But they are.
I never say that. Okay. I never say that, Maurice.
Okay.
I never say that. I don't know who you're listening to. The reason I keep coming back to you, no, stop it, Maurice. The reason I keep coming back to you is because if you knew my history, you would know that there's a reason that I'm very specific about how I speak. I'm very specific. I have said that whether you have a Democratic or a Republican administration, Black people need to negotiate with both, because no other group gets locked out. Nobody. I have never, ever said that because I understand how politics works, Maurice. Reverend Jackson has often said that we have been in slavery longer than we have been free. So there's a lot about power that we do not understand.
Miss Jackson,
yes.
Maurice just dropped himself and Dr. Malvo is up.
Okay, and I'll just continue my comments, but let me tell you something. Like I told you, I am not going to be talked down to, and what I've tried to do is share with everyone information. Let me hear Dr. Malvo so we can make sure that we have her up. And do we still have Attorney C.K. Hoffler on?
Yep, we still have her.
Dr. Malvo?
I'm here. Good morning.
How are you? I was having a back and forth with one of my listeners. He's lovely. That having been said, I had to let him know that he had his facts wrong. And you would know this, Dr. Malvo, because you've been with Reverend, oh my goodness, more than 40, almost 50 years. And you acting like I'm going to be an apologist for the Democratic Party. I'm like, we've never been apologists. We've had to fight the Democrats every step of the way. And I let him know.
The fact that we're pragmatists. Cynthia, we're pragmatists.
Yeah.
We know what are.
Okay, wait a minute. I want to make sure we have you. Okay. Dr. Malvo?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. You were going in, you were going out.
And what I said is we're pragmatists. Democrats are not perfect. We know that. We know that they were the party of Robert Byrd, a segregationist. But we know that we live in a two-party system, and what we choose is the better alternative to Democrats. Not the perfect people, not the lesser of two evil, but better. Reverend Jackson ran as a Democrat and made a tremendous impact. Imagine he had run as an independent. He would have been a blip on the radar screen. He ran as a Democrat both to empower Black people, to empower all, essentially to move the Democratic Party to the left.
And to move American politics to the left. And to have sane policies in the Middle East, to have sane policies domestically, internationally. That's what this was about. And we had to fight the Democrats while we were running as Democrats. And we didn't fight to tear up the party. We were fighting to build up the party. These people did not want the 2.5 million voters Reverend brought in. They created something called the DLC to counteract Reverend Jackson. You remember that, Juliana? Can you imagine you bring 2.5 million people into a party and then y'all create an organization to undercut them? Who does that? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry?
But you know what, Santita, they're still doing it. They're still doing it.
All the time.
Democratic Party, so woefully imperfect. Look at Sherry Beasley running in North Carolina. They have not put money into her campaign. She is within a point of winning. They put a lot of money into other campaigns. John Fetterman, which we love Brother Fetterman and we wish him all good things, and he should beat Dr. Oz. But why not put some money in this North Carolina campaign? Imagine the impact of having a Black woman senator from North Carolina. She can do this. But the Democrats have not put any money into her. Black women, Donna Brazile was quoted on Sunday in the New York Times saying, Democrats have not put enough money into Black women's races. Val Demings, they're behaving as if she can't win it. But again, she's within striking distance of Marco Rubio. Why not put some money into that campaign?
And you know what? So if they had pushed, these women would be going in.
Miss Jackson, we have 1 minute.
Democrats are racist. We know they're racist, and none of us are apologists for them. But what we are is pragmatic. I mean, I'm so sick of these little, forgive me, but these people who keep saying, oh, we didn't get this, so we're not going to vote. Well, keep your behind home then and see what you're going to get.
Well,
I mean,
wait a minute. People who don't participate in the fight. I'm like, are you serious right now?
You know, I mean, I keep hearing. I had an argument with a student yesterday. He told me that, yeah.
Wait, but hold on. You know what? What do you know? Hold on. Her phone keeps going out.
30 seconds.
See if she has another phone, Jewel. Okay.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
You know, her phone keeps going out.
Got it. No worries.
See if there's another phone that we can. No, ask her if she has another phone that we can use. Okay, because you hear she keeps getting caught up. Thanks so much.
Okay, stand by. We're about to go live.
All right, and I have that live read. Okay, thank you. Oof.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. It used to be Air America, but now we're WCPT, the Heartland Signal. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please go on over there, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and call us at 773-763-9278. We've been talking about the Biden administration's proposal. They're mulling sending Haitian asylum seekers, immigrants, to the Guantanamo-based prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. What do you think about that? What about race as one of the things that you consider an admission in college? The Supreme Court looks like they are poised to get rid of that. And then, of course, John Nichols will be talking with us about the midterms. What is going on, everybody? It's a week from today. Go to vote.org, vote.org. Find out about your registration status. You can do something about it. And also find out where you can vote, where you're supposed to vote. That's where you go to find out where you're supposed to vote, vote.org. If you're voting early or if you vote next Tuesday, if you have any problems at the polls, inside the polls or just outside the polls, don't leave. Call 1-866-our-vote. 1-866-our-vote. And stay there until you have cast your vote. Okay? Don't leave. Oh my goodness, do not leave. I'm Santita Jackson. It is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Let's get right to it. In Chicago, it's going to be a high of 66 degrees, sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 70 degrees and sunny. Beautiful weather. Major League Baseball, the Astros versus the Phillies tonight in the World Series. Who you got, everybody? History says the Phillies will take it, but we don't know. In the NFL, the Browns were triumphant over the Bengals 32-13. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Suns tonight, and the Bulls will be facing off against the Nets. In the NHL, the Islanders will be playing Chicago, and the Canadiens will be facing the Wild. 21 million Americans have voted in this election cycle. We've already broken the 2018 records. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? Have you voted? Please vote. Please vote. Right-wing justices appear ready to eviscerate affirmative action in college admissions. Clarence Thomas was asking, what is diversity? Just explain what it is. He said it a little contemptuously. The right-wing judges were questioning the pro-affirmative action lawyers very harshly. Ketanji Brown Jackson, for her portion, was a very, very sharp-pointed, polite critique of those anti-affirmative action lawyers. So I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. Call us, text us at 773-763-9278. Yes, I did say text because you can do that. We'll be talking with the brilliant Dr. Julianne Malveaux about race as a factor in college admissions. Before I get there, let's get to financial freedom, everybody. Do you have good credit, bad credit? Do you need to establish your credit? Do you want to purchase a home? Do you want to refinance the home that you've got? Do you want to whittle down that credit card debt? Whatever you do, do not call that credit card company yourself, because you need an advocate. And Team Hochberg can be that. They can tell you about VA loans, FHA loans, reverse mortgages. Even if you've been turned down for loans, they can help you to reapply and help you to get that loan. You need an advocate. You need people who understand the system. They do. Tom and Sonia did that. They had 17 credit cards, a huge mortgage, and $100,000 worth of debt on those credit cards. Guess what they did? They said, well, look, we don't want to lose our homes. We need to figure out how we can get out from under this mountain of debt. So they called Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. And with this free consultation, they told them everything. After that, they came back to Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg had a plan for them. They were able to whittle down their monthly payments over $2,800, and they were able to save their homes, get them an FHA loan. That could be you, everybody. A lot of people are struggling out here. In fact, most Americans are. Most people are. So call Team Hochberg and let them be your advocates. Call them at 855-56-DAVID or visit 56david.com. 855-56-DAVID. Call them and get that free consultation, or go on their website, 56david.com, and find out how you too can get a credit card, get off that debit card, get onto a credit card, how you can get financial freedom. It is yours. It's just a phone call away at 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. The brilliant Dr. Julianne Malveaux, one of the leading lights in education and advocacy, and she's a brilliant public intellectual. She is the president emeritus of the vaunted Bennett College for Women. We just love her. She is the chair, along with Greg Mathis, Judge Greg Mathis, that one, of the Push for Excellence program. Been with us a long time, MIT-trained PhD economist, and she is the dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State Los Angeles. We love you, Dr. Julianne Malveaux. A little disturbed, though, to see what is going on with this court, this right-wing court, this supermajority, who seem inclined to end affirmative action. First, explain what affirmative action is and the impact that it's had on education and the impact that the loss of it could have on us all.
Well, first of all, Santita, always a pleasure to be with you and to be with the Push family and to be on your radio show. You're doing such a good job with it, so I'm happy to be here. Now, affirmative action really only came about in about 1968. It is a program that basically says all else is equal, you give the underrepresented group a leg up. But if you have two people that are identical, you're applying to Harvard, I'm applying to Harvard, you have a 3.3 GPA, I have a 3.3 GPA. But I'm Black. So I get the edge because I've been traditionally underrepresented. It doesn't say that if you have a 3.3 and I have a 2.3, I get admitted. It says that with all else being equal, race gives you an edge. That's affirmative action. In minority business, with business set-asides, it's the same thing. It says we have not had opportunities to do contracts with government. So we're going to set aside a pool of money for minority businesses. Again, they don't have to be, you're not going to get the worst business, a failing business. They've got to jump through every hoop that any other business has to do, but then they get the edge because they've been traditionally excluded. And that's what affirmative action is. Now, crazy white people, let me just put it that way, have basically distorted it and talked about quotas. There was only one case of a quota that we've seen, and that was in the Bakke case.
Well, are you going to put Clarence Thomas in that crazy pile?
We just pray for them. We just put him on the altar.
Okay,
we just put him on the altar. But I mean, I don't believe that ignorance, I'm going to try to keep it clean, but I don't believe that ignorance is transmitted congenitally. But that wife of his has had undue influence on him, and we know that. And we know where she's coming from because we've seen what she's written. Something is wrong with Clarence Thomas, but we've all talked about what's wrong with him. He has a complex. He hates himself because he's Black. He's written about how people at Yale teased him because he was affirmative action entry to Yale Law School. But here's what we know about Yale Law School. They did that. Clarence Thomas was as bright as Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton, also Yale student. As bright as anybody else, just flawed, just fatally flawed. So affirmative action opened the door. You have to take the test yourself. You have to pass the bar yourself. There's no affirmative action in the bar. The bar does not say if you get a whatever, I don't know how they score it, but you get a high pass and I get a high pass, we both pass. If you get a high pass and I do not pass, I do not pass. The bar is not race weighted. The opening the door is affirmative action. Getting out is your work. Clarence Thomas was teased from the time he was a child, and he hates his blackness because it was held against him even by our own people. They used to call him ABC, which stood for America's Blackest Child. The people who grew up with called him that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's walking around with a complex, and now he has the power to exercise his complex on the rest of us. Clarence Thomas, Santita, he once wrote a legal opinion. A brother was in a jail in Louisiana. The guards beat him so bad, his dental plate broke inside his mouth. Clarence Thomas said that was not cruel and unusual punishment. That's just how it is if you happen to go to jail. So you should be ready to have your dental plate broken in your mouth. So, Clarence Thomas is a joke, but unfortunately he's a joke that keeps on giving in terms of this affirmative action battle. This organization, Santita, Students for Fair Admissions, is led by Clarence Thomas' protege. The attorneys in the case are both former clerks of Clarence Thomas. He's got his footprint all over this thing. So, Ketanji Brown Jackson, for all her brilliance, is going to have a very difficult time swaying a court that is stacked against us. But we know that. We know that Plessy versus Ferguson. We've had stacked Supreme Courts before. This will not stop us, but it will slow us down.
Well, I think it's very interesting that this is happening at this time because many people have said nothing has changed. This proves that nothing has changed. And Dr. Malveaux, I believe that that's not true. I think a lot has changed, but we have to understand, that the issues in our society they're hundreds of years deep, and it takes hundreds of years to peel this stuff away. I mean, the question is now, because I think that insults ancestors, that insults all the progress that Frederick Douglass and people before him and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Jackson and all these people have made. The question is, what are we going to do with our leg? Our leg of this struggle. Because I remember as a child, when the Bakke decision came about, my parents told us as children, because they would have political discussions with us as children, they said, affirmative action is going to be ended in your lifetime. My mom and daddy said that to me 40 years ago. Well, the Bakke decision was 75. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. They said, no, in your lifetime, you're going to have a real fight, honey, because that means that's not just college, as you just said, Dr. Malveaux, and I need you to explain that. That's contracts, government contracts. Boeing is basically an adjunct of the federal government. They get huge government contracts. That's why, but they're private, but they are a private corporation, as so many of these Amazon and the big box stores. They get big government contracts. That's how they make money hand over fist. Dr. Malveaux, what does affirmative action, who does it advantage? Doesn't it advantage white women a great deal?
White women have gained more from affirmative action than any black person, Latino. White women, wouldn't you call women a disadvantaged group? White women are the mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives of white men. So they've got a leg up anyway. They've been discriminated against because of their gender, but gender discrimination is very different than race discrimination. And by the way, where does that leave black women doubly discriminated against? But in any case, the Boeing case is a great one, but there's so many others of government contractors who, because of affirmative action or minority business set-asides, have been basically forced to do business with people they ordinarily didn't do business with. Understand that business is about relationships. It's not about who's best. It's about relationships. And black business has been blocked out of a certain number of relationships. Affirmative action opens the door for them to develop the relationships. There is an 8A set-aside program, part of the Small Business Administration, and you can only stay in the 8A program for a certain amount of time when you graduate. And what we found with many programs is when they graduate from 8A, having done very good work and very not only very good and very solid work, but also having done basically met the terms of their contract. Once they graduated, some white majority corporations said, "Oh, we don't need to deal with you again," because once you graduate from 8A, you cannot benefit from the set aside anymore. So those who are brilliantly developing, let me say it again, relationships. Those who are developing relationships will have the opportunity to stay in the program. But, economic envy is a witch that rhymes with a bee. Economic envy is what has kept Black people at the periphery, and it continues to do so. Economic envy is when Black people get a little bit of something. There is a group of folks, a majority predatory capitalists, who don't want us to have it. And so they'll fight and do anything they can to keep us from getting it. And so with higher education, you're seeing some gains. Not as many as we'd like, but we're seeing some gains. And those gains we get, every time we get a gain, we get resistance. Look at the presidency of Barack Obama. Hardly perfect, as you and I know, but it opened all kind of doors. And what do we get behind that? The orange orangutan. Because he basically spoke to the basest sentiments of a group of envious white people who do not want Black people to have.
But don't call him an orangutan now. I don't do name calling here. But what he did do was he's part of a painful history here, Dr. Malvo. I mean, the fact is he didn't start. The kindlings have already been there, and that's what's so awful. We're not being honest about that, and I think we're not being honest about you have been at the highest echelons of education for more than 40 years as a student, as a college president, now as a dean of one of the most prestigious universities in the world. What does it mean? What will be the actual impact of removing race? Race as as just a factor in admissions. What will that mean?
Essentially, removing race is likely to mean a drop in the in Black admissions. We saw it at the University of California. We saw a drop as soon as Proposition 209 passed. We saw a drop in Black admissions. When I was a professor at UC Berkeley, the enrollment was maybe 7% African American, but now it's probably closer to 3%. And that's partially because of Proposition 209. You're right that the previous president, let me just call him 45, the previous president was not the beginning of anti-Blackness. He was part of a continuum. But and you see that as soon as we get a gain, a Black president, Barack Obama, a gain, then we have to see the resistance. We're seeing, in the work that I do now, Santita, as Dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, we're seeing pushback in terms of critical race theory, in terms of states passing laws that say you can't teach race in the classroom.
Well, wait a minute. Eliminating affirmative action, how will that impact critical race theory?
Well, you'll probably have fewer Black faculty. Not that Black folks are the only people who teach critical truth theory. And let's just call it truth. Critical truth theory. Because critical race theory really it's a legal concept that talks about the ways that legal systems work together to create inequality and exclusion. Ethnic studies, as the first cousin to critical race theory, we talk about how we take the curriculum and broaden it, how things that have been ignored in curriculum have to be included. I gave a talk on Saturday and used a number of examples from our lives of economic envy. And a group of predominantly Black students, they knew about Tulsa, of course, but they didn't know about Wilmington, North Carolina, nor about the lynchings in Memphis that catapulted I.B. Wells' career, nor the many lynchings that took place because Black people had too much. So these young people, PhD students really, and very bright in their fields, this is something they had not been taught. Critical race theory would say that structures conspired to make this possible. Ethnic studies would say we have to know what had been made possible, what happened.
Can you stay with me a couple more minutes? I know we've got John Nichols coming up at the bottom of the hour, but I have Carrie and Paul, at least I'd like for you to hear their comments, and I'd like for you to respond to them. Would you mind doing that?
I can do it.
No, please do, because this is very, very big, and I'm going to have you back on the show to talk about this even more extensively, because removing race as just one of the aspects of admitting a student, it is a dangerous thing. I mean, Dr. Malveaux, I just had this gentleman who said, your father got you into Harvard. I'm like, no. When I got into Harvard, Dr. Alan Counter, do you remember him? Professor Alan Counter.
Oh, yeah.
He called my mother and said, you know what? Just letting you know, so pleased that Santita got in. He said, he was like the faculty advisor to the admissions committee. He said, we had to fight so hard to get her through, but we got her through, Miss Jackson. And my mother went all the way there and off. She said, I am so tired of all of you. I did not ask for Harvard. Harvard called my daughter, and you all came to her school. You sent her more than one application. You asked her. But because you don't like my husband's politics, as the interviewer said to her, you had to fight a merit scholar through committee. She said, what are your standards? What's going on here? And my point is, it's all political, y'all. Because I got into Yale, no, there was no problem. I spoke with Dr. Bart Giamatti just months before he died because he wanted to talk to me because what had happened to me was like he said it was the talk of the Ivy League because it was so awful. It's all political, everybody. And either you subscribe to the 3/5, 7/5 human idea established in America at the beginning where black people were 3/5 human and white folks were superhuman, 7/5 human. Or you don't. This is ridiculous. Race has always been a factor in admission. It just favored white people, right, Julianne Malveaux? Okay? They were the ones who got the edge because they were white. Everybody else got the slight because they were not white. Indigenous people had to pretend to be white. Everybody had to pretend to be white in order to get on in America. Now, America, you need to grow up and stop it. 30 seconds for you, Dr. Malveaux, before we go to break.
One of my brilliant nephews calls Indian people and some Asian people white adjacent.
Absolutely. Yes.
Privileges of whiteness, and therefore they embrace whiteness. They're white adjacent, but they don't understand they're not white either.
But you know what? But that's some white Asians, because those people are readily identifiable others, and that's why I want to bring some Asian American brothers and sisters onto the show, because all of them are not signing on for this. We got to California, and you know that, in 1984, and we saw the people who were running the Jackson campaign, the Asian community, and the black community, but the Asians were up front. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Julianne Malveaux and John Nichols. Stay right here. Back in just a minute. Oh, Dr. Malveaux. It's just, because I've always said people who are white adjacent, they're always the problem. Like, in terms of attitude, Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, is white adjacent. In his thinking, Dr. Malveaux. In his thinking.
Exactly.
Oh.
Well, yeah, and that wife of his, that's really as much of
Girl,
a
he was a nut
else.
before he married Miss Virginia. You know that.
That's true. He was a nut from the time he was born. Really.
No, but you know what? He's been mistreated, and you know what? And he's been embittered by it, and that is his tragedy.
Yeah,
that's his tragedy.
Exactly it. He has been mistreated.
He's when you're white, you're all right. When you're yellow, you're mellow. When you're brown, stick around. When you're black, get back. He was told to get back. And he did not develop a love for his people. As a result, he developed contempt and hatred.
Yes. Well, he was horribly teased as a child, from what I understand. He's written about it.
Yeah.
And it made him hate his black skin.
Well, it helped him hate. Because he was on his way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, because some folks, some people come through that, and they embrace their blackness. Mary McLeod Bethune embraced her blackness.
Yes, she did.
Come on now.
And became one of our most one of our most absolutely brilliant scholars.
James Baldwin. I mean, what?
Oh yeah.
No. He's just. I'm sorry. He's just. He's a little weak. Sorry.
He was also teasing. His teasing did not embitter. It empowered him.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can look at both my parents. They've had very different experiences because they have different looks. But my mother talks about it all the time, Julianne. Dr. Malvo, she talks about it all the time. And because my mother phenotypically is more West African than my father, and that's just it. And it does color your life. It does. My brother Jonathan was treated very differently we're the first three, then Jesse and I. And my father
Miss
said,
Jackson,
yes.
We have John Nichols and we have Miss Wells on.
Great.
And we have about a minute and a half.
Perfect. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Board Operator. And you know what? My father said, there were people who we would not allow back in our home because we saw them favor you and Jesse over Jonathan. And my father said, I was not going to let someone treat my baby that way. That's very real. But it depends upon how you internalize it, Dr. Malvo.
Absolutely. And, some people, again, pride of race is part of their DNA. Others, it's not. I mean, Clarence Thomas hates his sister.
The girl?
He's thrown her under the bus in conversation.
On paper. Who does that? I mean, he's got some other issues. I mean, and God bless him, because we understand the culture until we understand the forces that have shaped him, and it's painful because he's taking his personal animus out on the rest of the world. I got to pay
30 seconds.
for that. We all paying for that because he is a self-loathing black man. Oh, yeah. John Nichols, how are you?
I'm well, dear. How are you?
He always walks into the midst of a storm. You know John Nichols, Dr. Julianne Malvo.
From the nation.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Indeed, you are, of course, friend. And I know you as well.
Well, you know what I've got to do, because we've had a hot
Stand
conversation,
by.
of
We're
course,
about to go live. Stand by.
I got it. About affirmative action. I've got to keep her on so she can speak to this. Stay right there.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the midterms. John Nichols is with us, of course, as we get to John Nichols. Because there's so much that's going on. You've got the Biden administration, which is mulling, sending Haitian asylum seekers, would-be immigrants to the Guantanamo Bay prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Then we've got affirmative action, which is on the chopping block. But this supermajority, this conservative supermajority, the SCOTUS is on track to gut it, if not outright if you heard the questioning from Justice Alito yesterday, it was very clear. They are hostile to affirmative action. Hostile. Even Justice Roberts got in on it. And then we've got to talk about these midterms, these tighter than this races, which Dr. Julianne Malvo has been talking about, that the Democrats will not help these black women win, or Mandela Barnes, really. I mean, what is going on, everybody? It's just like nuts. But, several of you have called in and you've wanted to talk about, you've wanted to give your comments on affirmative action. I asked Dr. Malvo to stay so she can kind of put a bow on this conversation. She will be back with us to talk about this. But before I do, very quickly, it's the holiday season. It is upon us. And Chaparral, what's going on?
Good morning, Santita. And yes, we are ready for the holiday season. So please put your orders in for your turkey, your green beans, your mashed potatoes, as well as also your mac and cheese, your sweet tables as well, your sweet potato pie, your red velvet cake, your peach cobbler, and your banana pudding. We are taking orders now for the holiday season. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
All right. Thank you so much, Shapiro. Let me go to Carrie from Champaign. Carrie, what's on your mind? What are your thoughts about affirmative action?
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Morning. I've been a fan of both. Morning. I've been a fan of both of you over the years.
Oh, bless your heart.
The one thing I've seen Ms. Malvo, Dr. Malvo, on TV all the time, and I've always been a great big fan of her. But the thing is that I'm noticing also too over the years. I know this isn't nothing new, because I know you, Santita. I got to be ready.
Yes.
Have you guys noticed the NFL? Your dad said it's a microcosm of society back in the day in the 80s. I can always remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the NFL. You see more and more white women as referees.
Mm-hmm. Wait, have you been reading, just put a pin in that. Have you been, the the Washington Post this week, really over the past few months, they have had a tremendous series on the racism in the NFL. I would urge you to go to the Washington Post and pull up those stories. They are thorough and they are fantastic.
Oh, the NFL stands for not long for losers. And to me, what America wants to do, they want to be a white nationalist society, a white Christian nationalist society. That's what we're trying to push here. We don't want no minorities to have any education. We don't want no whites to have any education, and we just want to be just like Russia, and only the oligarchs are the only ones going to be educated.
But that's not Russia. Don't buy into that propaganda. That's a world issue. Okay. The royal family, they're the ultimate oligarchs. The wealthiest person on earth was Queen Elizabeth, and now it's her son.
I understand.
Okay, they own 1/6 of the world's landmass. Right. 1/6. Who owns whole nations? Huh? Who does that?
Well, it's like this. I look at Russia like this. We have two kind of a different view on it.
But let's kind of stay back on affirmative action. We can talk about Russia another day, okay?
Okay.
Okay, sweetie.
But in America, like I said, when I'm on jobs, I see it. Mm-hmm. They hire, if it's 10 whites they're going to hire, they hire all 10. If they need a black on there, they're going to hire 1. They hire 2. And it's been going on for over 50 years and longer. So that affirmative action, we made a lot of gains,
mm-hmm.
but also white affirmative action has been around much longer. Here to stay.
Mm-hmm. Which is what Dr. Malvo was saying. The ultimate, not even affirmative action. Look, everybody was blocked because it was only for white men. There's that.
But now it's for white women.
Well, it always was. They were always going to be taken care of. Unfortunately. I mean, look, they inherit their husband's wealth. Right?
Yeah, right, because they brought them out the house. They were always in the house, so they came out now. So they taking out jobs.
Let me say this. All I ask, but you know what? All I ask of white women, Dr. Malvo and John Nichols, remember the struggle. Okay? I'm not mad at anybody. I expect you to come out of your situation not forgetting the struggle, and that becomes the problem. Carrie, I need to move on, but I want you to stay right with us. I mean, just keep listening to us, and I want to thank you for you're one of the first calls I got from down there in Champaign, and I'm sending you much love.
Hey, do you remember the first question I ever asked you?
No, I do not.
It was when they were on Reverend Wright, and I said, "Do you think Barack Obama would change church?" You said, "No, I'm not going to answer that." You answered that, and I answered it, and they changed, and he had to change his church.
That was the first question I ever asked.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Bless your bless your heart. My honey, because wow. Oh, whew. There's a whole lot. I love you. I love you, Carrie. Thank you, sweetie. Paul, Paul from Seattle. What's on your mind today?
Hello?
Hey, Paul, sweetie, I have time for a quick comment from you.
Sure. Okay. I'm astonished at the arguments set forth by this court, because since the Bakke case, as Dr. Malva mentioned, there was Bakke. We've also had at the University of Michigan the Graydon case, and so the University of Michigan Law School, and the Gratz case, both in 2003. And Fisher versus University of Texas, the court has acknowledged that the universities had a compelling interest in a diverse student population. So when Clarence Thomas says, I hear the word diversity a lot, and I don't even know what it means, it makes me think, well, then he hasn't been paying attention for the last 30-some years, because it has come up. And so when the court acknowledges that they have a compelling interest, he apparently was asleep in class. But he did argue in the Graydon case that he argued against diversity, he did that. So he has a bias going into this. So I don't understand. And the other thing about this case, it being Harvard being the focus, Harvard, it's the compelling interest was the first thing. The only thing in question was the method of going. That's what has Bakke failed on, the method. The University of Michigan Law School passed because Harvard College had a system, an affirmative action system that the court seemed to like. It was narrowly tailored, and it was specific to the individual. It wasn't just a point system or a quota system. And now it's Harvard that's on the chopping block, which is astonishing to me that this court, many of the people who were the judges who were on the court were on these previous cases. They're willing to overturn themselves just to be more extreme, which is just. And Justice Coney Barrett to say her problem is when does it sunset? Where's the end of this? Because she can't see that doesn't mean there isn't a problem, or that the colleges don't have a compelling interest in a diverse population. I was interested to hear that.
Dr. Malvo, why don't you speak to what you've heard? Well, what Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to say? Well, I mean, this is going to be fast. Don't worry, Paul. We're going to talk about this more going forward. But I need to find out from John Nichols about this election. But I want, at least for this part one of this conversation, because we're going to bring Dr. Malvo back at 5 a.m. her time. She's out in LA. What are you hearing? What is our takeaway as we watch this unfold, Dr. Malvo?
Our takeaway is that the struggle is not over. African American people have been systematically discriminated against, sidelined, marginalized. Affirmative action was one way of opening doors. They're about to slam a door, but that doesn't mean that we don't keep struggling. We know that we have to continue to struggle because we know that we're right. And we know that we deserve our taxpayer dollars. When we're looking at state universities, rather Michigan, our tax dollars pay for us to be discriminated against. But we have to come at it as warriors to say, no, we've had enough. And for a little, Miss Muppet, Mary, you don't have no name caller, Amy Comey Barrett, with all her wide-eyed naivete, when does it end? When racism ends. That's when it ends.
Amen.
Amen. John Nichols, here we are. Here we are. Because we have so much going on in the midst of this midterm. And I don't want us to forget that we're looking at sending Haitian immigrants to the Guantanamo base, the military prison. I don't want us to forget about what's being put before the Supreme Court and what that could mean. I mean, there's just so much happening. And then we're a week out from these races. Winnable races, John. North Carolina is winnable for the Democrats. Florida is winnable for the Democrats, but I've not seen the Democrats pour the resources. I mean, and not necessarily, okay, say President Biden is too hot to touch. Okay, say that. But they can pour other resources into those races and other races. But they're not doing it. I mean, Sherry Beasley, the former justice of the Supreme Court of the state of North Carolina, is begging for resources. I mean, whew, I don't know what to say. So I mean, but we're seeing Fetterman, we're seeing the Fetterman Oz race. It's tight. It's tighter than makes me comfortable. But do you think he's going to win? Do you think or is it just a toss up? Is everything a toss up? And if it is, why do we have so many toss ups, John?
There's a lot on the table there.
Yes, you can handle it.
Look, here's the bottom line. All of these things that we're talking about today are related. And we don't have to de-link our concerns about what's happening in the court from our concerns about what's happening with refugees, from our concerns about what's happening with the economy, et cetera. These are all interlinked challenges because we have a deeply divided country. And right-wing forces have been highly successful in playing on those divisions in this election year. And obviously, when you have the Supreme Court debating affirmative action a week before an election, do you think that's totally a coincidence? Come on. This is how politics is played. The court is a highly political institution.
No.
People should understand such. Yes. And so, you put all this on the table, and we shouldn't be surprised at all that there are a lot of close elections. The fact of the matter is that in a midterm, it is very, very common, as we well know, for the party associated with the president in office to lose, to fall back, to suffer at least some losses. And so going into this race, the Democrats were in a tough position. Things have gotten tougher because we are suffering from a very serious inflation crisis. And the Democrats failed, and we'll put this up front because this isn't all going to be bashing on them, but they failed to recognize that tens of millions of Americans were feeling immense economic hurt because of inflation. And they did pass the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, and they did some other things, but they didn't come right out to the forefront and say, look, this inflation is based on price gouging by multinational corporations that are taking advantage of a circumstance. And if you give us the power, right, we need these additional seats in the Senate, we need to hold the House, we will take it on. And here's how we will take it on. So instead of running a clearly focused campaign that talked about fundamental issues, that talked about the threat to Social Security, that talked about the threat to abortion rights as part of an overall agenda that talked about the threat to democracy, we've seen the Democrats going in lots of different directions, to the left, to the right, up the middle, and run in every different direction except in a coherent, united way. What that has led to is a circumstance where I think a lot of voters are confused, they're uncertain, they're angry. And so right now, when I look across the country, what I see is tight, close races, which could go either way for the U.S. Senate. We'll just use the Senate as a baseline. The other races matter as well. In Nevada, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, right? You look across that, and Iowa, by the way, which has gotten surprisingly close of late. So you look across that map, there are all these close races. And what's desperately needed at this closing point is a coherent message that says, look, if these Republicans take control of the United States Senate and you have another vacancy on the U.S. Supreme Court, which you could, they will block President Biden's nominee. They will, they'll do just what they did back with Merrick Garland, and there will be no replacement during the last 2 years of President Biden's tenure. And they will mess with the federal judiciary as well. So what you're seeing on the Supreme Court will get worse. There will certainly be no humane or responsible effort to address immigration or refugee issues. There will certainly be no serious effort to deal with inflation in a way that would actually help the great mass of working people in this country. And there will be an ongoing threat to democracy. So putting this into perspective, giving clarity here, is what's needed in this final stage. And I will tell you that it was very notable over the weekend. President Obama came to Wisconsin to campaign for Mandela Barnes in a very critical race for the U.S. Senate. And Obama had that clarity. And, you know, I mean, he was not perfect in every way. You can object to him in some ways. You can see things he did right, things he did wrong. But boy, on the campaign trail, he has had absolute clarity. He's talked about all these issues in smart, lively, effective, and, you know, funny at times. He's maintained a sense of humor. It's very, very effective. And I don't know at this point why the Democrats don't put Obama on air nationwide. You know, accept the reality that they have failed on the message up to this point.
But why?
You've got a week to go.
I mean, see, wait. Hold on, John. I don't understand that. I really don't understand how they are snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Because they have to say.
Remember, week to go.
I mean, I don't understand why the message is not cohesive, particularly if these races, and these races are close in Iowa, in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, because, you know, Mark Kelly's trying to hold on to that seat too, in North Carolina. Yep. Val Demings came out of what? Nowhere. I mean, yep. Charles Booker, we're not even talking about him. I mean, I don't understand.
Charles Booker. Well, let's pause for a second and recognize we're talking about some first-tier races, and you're right to add Arizona to that list. And the top-tier races, the ones that have gotten the most money, and tons of money has gone, you know, into all of these races, huge amounts of spending. The tragedy of it is that Democrats didn't lock up some of these races early on so that they could move down, you know, that list of priorities to some of those candidates who are running remarkable campaigns that are not getting the funding or support that they need. I put Charles Booker at the top of that list. Mm-hmm. Booker's running in Kentucky, Rand Paul. He is running a brilliant Rainbow Coalition style campaign. He calls it Hood to the Holler. His message is that you can unite working class people in Louisville with working class people in rural Kentucky and build a new coalition, multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multi-regional, that can really take on the Republican Party. It is not an unreasonable idea, but it needs resources. It needs support. And what we've seen, unfortunately, is that with that lack of initial messaging, the lack of clarity, and then the desperation of the moment, now we're coming into an election a week after, what we're seeing is incumbent Democratic senators who are scared are saying, no, we need the money, right? Because instead of moving in the right direction, picking up seats, you know, moving forward, now Democrats are moving into a defensive mode, and you're seeing the money go to incumbents who've gotten into tight races around the country and things of that nature. End result, you know, Santita, is that this is a pivotal moment. And your father taught me something a long time ago. When you get in a moment like this, a week out from an election, you don't complain about the barriers that are in your way. Mm-hmm. You don't complain about mistakes that are made in the past. You recognize you have a week to go in order to get it right. And that's the only reason I reflect on some of the mistakes and errors that have been made is that with a week to go to get it right, there is still time. It is not too late, but you've got to stop, you know, turn off the autopilot, start to steer, real human beings thinking about what's going to happen. Don't just follow the plan because the plan hasn't been working. Start to focus on what you can do in this last week. I would argue Barack Obama is an incredibly powerful voice and ought to be used a lot more. His interventions on the stump have been incredibly effective. I'm glad that Bernie Sanders is on a plane flying across the country, doing more than 20 stops to mobilize young people as, you know, the one political figure who's had tremendous effect in recent years on mobilizing young voters. I'm glad that there are other efforts around the country to get this going. But what I want to emphasize is they've got to be on a core set of messages. And it's not one message. The Democrats for a long time were looking for, maybe this is the silver bullet or maybe this is the answer. No, it's a core set of messages, a group that goes together. One, Democrats will defeat inflation and make sure that poor and working class people do not suffer in this moment. Two, Democrats will preserve Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, all of which are under threat if Republicans take control of Congress. Three, Democrats will preserve abortion rights. And people should understand that if this Congress is taken over by Republicans, they will use the budget power to undermine abortion rights and undermine protections for women. Number four, this election is about democracy. And you cannot let people who supported a coup attempt in January of 2021 take charge of Congress in January of 2023. Simple message, took me way less than a minute to state those points. And the fact of the matter is, if they were out delivering this with full force and full power with their best effective messengers, there's still a chance to win all those races.
Well, I mean, the fact that they don't have you on the team just says a lot. That's crazy to me. Let me bring on Robert from Wisconsin. I know we have a couple of minutes, literally. Robert, 1 minute, it belongs to you because I want you to speak to your fellow Wisconsinite.
I'll be really quick. Yeah, I'll be really quick. Obviously, we need to get out the vote. Brad Path is running against one of these insurrectionists. He has about 700 grand. The competitor has 4.5 million. Really troubling. The civic media organization has changed their format. So this morning, instead of talking about get out the vote, we're talking about farming. Very, very problematic. We need college kids to come out. We need people in the suburbs to come out at record numbers to get the numbers out there. So if there's anyone down there that can knock doors, make phone calls, make a small donation, participate in this, that we go a long way. The campaigns were poorly run. Instead of Johnson's campaign being a referendum on Johnson, it's become a referendum on Mandela Barnes because he was doing introductory ads in October instead of attacking Johnson. So if anyone can get out there to help, it would be much appreciated. The reality is we're very close to them having a supermajority. So even if Beavers gets elected, he can be overridden in a number of ways. Thank you.
No, Robert, stay right there because I'm going to talk with John for a hot second on the other side of the break. John, I have 30 seconds. What do you want to say?
What Robert puts on the table is important. And the fact of the matter is we could take a caller from virtually every congressional district in the country and tell you a similar story. People need to physically get out and work. I mean, this is the point where if you see your values on the line, this is the time to decide. Don't complain after November 8th. Focus on the fact that there is a week to go, and a week in politics can be transformational.
Absolutely, everybody. All hands on deck. I know you've got your disappointments. I know that there are things that did not happen that you wanted to have happen. But you know what? That's politics. Politics is a contact sport. It is for adults. And as a grown person, you win some, you lose some. You get happy sometimes, you get disappointed sometimes, but you always stay in the game, stay in the fight. Stay in the fight. Go to vote.org, find out what your registration status is. You got to find out where you need to go vote. Vote.org, that's where you can find out those things. If you have any trouble at the polls, just outside the polls or inside the polls or at the ballot box, have your mobile phone, do a recording, take pictures, do everything you can, but call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. 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 And that way you can speak to lawyers who will help you. Don't leave the polling place until you have cast your vote. I'm Santita Jackson. I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, Lord willing. God bless. John, is there anything else you want to say to the Facebook Live crowd? A lot of people have gathered here today. A lot of people. A lot.
Well, look, it's the same message as we said a moment ago on radio, and that is that the really dangerous thing at this point is to get dispirited, to give up, to think, wow, a lot of the winds seem to be blowing in the Republican direction, and to imagine that these races can't be won. I just went through all the polls. And I do this on a pretty regular basis. I don't think polls are always right. I think they're often wrong. I also don't think that they are definitional because they're really just a snapshot from a certain point in time. But when I went through those polls, what I saw again and again in race after race is that the contest is down to a handful of votes. It really is down to a question of whether people turn out, whether they're mobilized. I don't think there's a lot of chance that you're going to switch voters. Somebody who's committed to go vote for insurrectionist Republicans isn't going to say suddenly, oh, wow, I just realized I want to vote for a Democrat. The answer is to mobilize people who are unlikely to vote or who are, kind of on the fence. And there are so many issues to mobilize them. That Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid issue is huge. It is malpractice that Democrats haven't brought it to the fore, that it isn't the one of the central issues of their campaign. Because the fact of the matter is that Ron Johnson in Wisconsin has said that he wants to switch any discussions of Social Security to an annual budgeting process. What that means, and he has allies in the Senate who agree with him on this, what that would mean is that Social Security is no longer a guarantee. You're no longer assured that you will get Social Security. What it becomes is a possibility, an option that would be decided upon on an annual or biennial basis by the Congress. You understand what that means? That means that if it's in a tough year, right, economically hard times, maybe a recession, something like that, Congress might, instead of increasing Social Security, might decide, oh, we've got to cut back on it. We don't have the resources to do it. Or, worse yet, might actually decide to increase the retirement age, to make it harder for people to qualify. I mean, Social Security is not a perfect program. It's not sufficient, but it's our baseline social welfare program in America. This is what not just elderly folks, but people with disabilities, children who lose their parents. This is baseline social welfare. And Ron Johnson, Rick Scott, and other people are literally talking about putting it up for grabs. I don't see how you can't run on that issue and mobilize people. I mean, that's a fundamental mobilizing issue. And Democrats should be talking about it, literally from, morning till sundown and then into the night.
Everybody, think about it. I mean, because I have to tell you, I'm just perplexed that I'm not, because well, you know what? I have been in more than a few meetings with Reverend, with the top Democrats, and he will say, this is what works. You need to do this, this, and this, and this. And they don't want to do it. I'm like,
yep.
You're going to lose if you don't do this. You don't do this. You don't campaign in a vacuum, John Nichols. You have to. I mean, it takes it. You look at the winning model and you follow it. I mean, I think people have to understand just how incredibly popular Ronald Reagan was, and for the Rainbow Coalition to cut through all of that and become a top-tier candidacy when people didn't think Reverend was going to get through the first primary. It was amazing. But then 2 years later to recapture the U.S. Senate for the Democratic Party, okay, Shelby went on and became a Republican. He was going to do that anyway. But you delivered the U.S. Senate to the Democratic Party. Reverend wasn't waiting for a thank you, but it's like there was a way that he did it, and they're not doing it, John. And I'm looking at these tighter than this races, and I mean tighter than this. I mean one word, tighter than this. That we could win, that we might lose, because you have a justice who is by her nature and professionally and personally very, very conservative. And and she said, look, I'm not getting enough money. I'm not getting enough attention. Democrats, I need your help. And guess what? They haven't said a mumbling word. She's within a point of beating the Trump-backed candidate in North Carolina. John, come on. What is that?
Yeah, I couldn't. Look, Beasley was a tremendous recruit. Really important person to get, as a candidate. It's incredible to have a former Supreme Court justice step really across that line from the judicial branch to the legislative and say, look, I'll run because the issues are so important, it's so vital. And this happens too often where Democrats get a great recruit. They get somebody who, this is an incredible candidate to have. And then as you get close to the election, instead of seeing it through with everything you've got, they start moving money around, right? And I really want to emphasize this. This happens cycle after cycle. The people who go out and recruit people to run for office, get them to get on the ballot, get them to go out and build a campaign, and get them to a point where they can actually, are within a hair's breadth of winning, right? Or, a little bit of room, they could actually make it. And then they say, oh, it's close all over the country. We're sorry. We got to move the money over here. We got to move the money over there. That isn't. I often have Republican friends who will say, "Oh, they ought to run, politics and government like a business." That's not how a business runs, right? If you invested in someone, got them into a position, and they're now close to actually closing the deal, you don't pull the money away from them, right? You don't undercut them at that point. You see it through. You make sure it works. And I really worry a lot, frankly, about a number of these races around the country where the resources might not be there. And boy, I'll tell you this, on November 9th, if you're looking at races that you lost by 20,000 votes or 30,000 votes that could have been won, what a nightmare that is.
Oh.
You know that in 1984, when Republicans took control of Congress and really disempowered Bill Clinton's presidency in fundamental ways, if you looked across the country, you found that it was really only a handful of votes that gave Republicans that control, especially in the House. If just a relatively small number of votes had shifted in key districts around the country, it would have gone the other way. And this happens again and again and again, Santita. And so what I'm saying now is that, I wish the Democrats would do a better job.
Do the job.
I'm not counting.
It's like they're not studying. And then some of the people that we send get there, and it's like, have you forgotten where you came from? What are you all doing?
Of course.
It's like you're hermetically sealed in a place that has very bad air because it's made you lightheaded. You're not thinking. And they think as Washington insiders. And they try to campaign that way. That is not how we live in Wisconsin, in Illinois, in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in Montana, in California. We don't live like that. The Beltway will choke you. Okay? You don't do that. So I'm just trying to figure out, because when the races are this close, to me, they're completely winnable. Completely winnable. And they do it cycle after cycle after cycle. That having been said, the message that you gave that was so cogent and so powerful, that's all you need to say. That's all that needs to be said, John.
Well, I know, look, I don't know that I'm the one who has all that has to be said, but I know that there are messages that can be delivered, core, simple messages that can work. But here's the bottom line, and this is a big deal. At this point, right, you and I, we talk a lot, and we'll have a chance to talk about, what went right or what went wrong after November 8th point. Again, taking the lesson from Reverend Jackson, who was always so astute on these things. At this point, we have to recognize Democrats have made mistakes, right? They may keep making mistakes, but it falls to us. How often has that been the case throughout history? Almost always, right? That at the end of the day, it falls to grassroots activists, people who might not even be Democrats, might not even really, be passionate for that party one way or the other, but who recognize what's at stake and who step up and do calls and do knock on doors and do go out and do the work that needs to be done. That's the point that we're at right now, because there is this concept of paralysis of analysis, right? We think too hard about things. At this point, it is time to think about one simple prospect, and that is that on all those issues I talked about, really reducing inflation, saving Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, preserving the right to choose, preserving democracy, on all those issues that we just talked about, if the Republicans in their current iteration, remember the Republican Party was once a pretty good party, but if the Republicans is what they have become, take charge of the House and the Senate, they will block every effort to address this in a humane and responsible way.
Wait a minute, and the investigations, John.
They'll turn it.
This will be a mess.
They'll be investigating. Yeah, they will be investigating the January 6th committee for investigating Trump, right? That's the chaos we'll have. And so what you want to ask yourself is a simple question. Whether you're a Democrat, independent, or even a thinking Republican, do you really want 2 years of chaos? At a time when our economy is unstable, at a time when we have a lot of inflation, at a time when we have all sorts of threats to our individual, at a time when democracy itself is really up for grabs, do you want 2 years of chaos? Because if you want 2 years of chaos, then you know exactly how to vote. And you can vote in two ways. Number one, you can go vote for the Republicans. Number two, you can stay home. Either way, you get the chaos, right? Or you have an alternative, right? And that is to come out, go to the polls, and vote for candidates who you think will actually defend the right to choose, defend democracy, defend Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and recognize that inflation is not a natural development. It is a man-made crisis, and the men who made this crisis are the CEOs of big oil companies and multinational corporations who decided to cash in and engage in rank profiteering at a time when you were coming out of COVID. That's the bottom line. That's what's happening. And it's not hard to figure out. But the fact is, you have a very simple choice. Either empower the people that are going to create chaos, or you empower people that are actually going to try and solve the problems.
John, I hope you can give me a little bit more time later on this week. I mean,
I'll be around.
Really, I'm going to check to see what I mean, we're still on Facebook Live, but let me know what the best 7:30 is best for you.
It's always best, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to reach out to you later on today because I think that we have to.
All right,
I really want you to talk to us about what's happening with Mandela Barnes and what you think about North Carolina, what you think about Florida, because we've not talked about Val Demings in Florida enough.
Yep.
I need your 30,000 foot view of what we're looking at.
Yeah. But the important thing is Mandela Barnes can win his race. Val Demings is in the running. All these races are competitive, but look, there's a reason why they have outspent Mandela Barnes, at least at some points in this race, by a 2-to-1 margin. They're terrified of the guy. They're afraid that this very, very capable, very, very engaged, and really effective political figure might go to the U.S. Senate. If he does, he would go there as somebody who is saying bluntly that he's not going to arrive as a millionaire, and he doesn't want to leave as a millionaire. He wants to serve in the United States Senate as a representative for working class people in this country. It's a really powerful message. It's one that scares a lot of political insiders and a lot of money people. And so they've tried everything they could to stop him. But the fact is, he's still in the running. He can do this.
Well, everybody, if you are within the sound of our voices, please get out and help that campaign. People in North Carolina, help Sherry Beasley's campaign. Just get out and get involved. That's so important. Get out and get involved. Get involved. Get involved. Get involved. Please, please, please get involved. And you make the case to your neighbors. How about that? I mean, that is really what John has been telling us. Because it's like Reverend Jackson has said, I did not wait for the Democratic Party to invite me. No, I saw the need and we just went on and met it.
That's right.
You're right. And that's at the end of the day, that's really what it is. You go out and don't complain. Just stop complaining about it because it is what it is. And people are going to do what they're going to do. You have to get a little selfish, not a little selfish, get a sense of self in politics. And you make sure that you move in to offer someone with whom you feel you can have the best chances of negotiating. That's really it. Because believe me, even the person that you like the most, John, once they are elected, their political foes become their best friends, because that's just how it works in politics. Because they're like, well, hey, you're the senator, so you're the congressman, or you're the state rep, you're the state senator, you're the governor, so you're my guy, you're my girl. That's the way it works. So you got to make sure. You know what I mean, John? I mean, it's just like people don't have those kind of loyalties once somebody has been elected. They go on. Think about Bob Strauss, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've seen people float between parties. We've been watching this a long time, John.
Yep. So look, the bottom line is very simple. At the end of the day, don't count on the people who've lost before. The Democrats failed in the first 2 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, and they lost the Congress. Democrats failed in the first midterm election after Barack Obama became president. They lost the House of Representatives, and then 2 years later, they lost the Senate. Now you've got another Democratic president, And the question is, are you going to count on the people who blew it in 1994 and in 2010, or are you going to say, no, we better take this job on ourselves, right? We better get out there, do what's necessary, because there may not be help, coming from above. It may actually be down at the grassroots with real people doing what needs to get done. I think that's the point that folks are at. There is a week to go out and do this. There are people organizing across this country in some of the most complex and tough places to do politics, but also in some very easy places to do politics. It's not hard to figure out how to get involved. This is the time to do it. It's as simple as that. A week to go, a week to win, right? Not a week to complain, not a week to fret, not a week to look back on what didn't work right. There's a week to go. There's a week to win.
A week to go, a week to win. How about that? A week to go, a week to win. Stay right there. A week to go, a week to win. A week to go, a week to win. So everybody think about that. We have 1 week to go, literally from now, and a week to win. Go to vote.org, find out what your registration status is, find out where you need to vote. And if you go vote early, or if you go vote on next Tuesday, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. If you have any problems on the perimeter of your polling precinct or once you get inside. Don't let anyone shout you down or intimidate you from going to the polling precinct or to a drop box. Use your phone, take pictures, take video, do everything you can, build a case. Your vote is yours. On this day, the prince and the pauper, the prince, the princess, and the pauper, same. We are the same. We're the same. We're the same. Take that very seriously. And people want to take that away from us, but we're Americans. We can't have that. I love you, everybody. I love you, John.
Love you too. Be strong. We'll talk soon.
Oh, I'll call you a little bit later because I want us to drive this home every day. It's very, very important. Sending you much love. Sending you much love. Thank you, Madam Board Operator, for a great show. Whew. Okay, everybody. God bless. Bye-bye.